and justice for all.
Would you please have a moment of silence? Mr. Hoover, could you please call roll?
Mrs. Lombardi.
Here.
Mr. Hershey.
Here.
Mr. Ketchum. Here. Mr. Hurt.
I'm here.
Miss Bell.
Here.
Miss Russell.
Present.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mrs. Birdwell.
Here.
Stacy Fuller.
Here.
And Mr. Hoover is here.
Hold on one second. So, Mr. Teal, I believe that you are audio taping?
Audio taping.
Is there anybody else videotaping tonight?
Yeah, we've got a video with OMG.
Oh, I'm. Oh my God. It's on.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Thank you.
So we have with us members of the Chester County Domestic Violence Center, and October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And to honor the cause, I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas anyone can be a victim of domestic violence, regardless of age, sex, ability, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, or religion. And whereas a family member is abused, it can have long-term damaging effects, not only on the victim, but the family, friends, and community at large. Whereas 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience abuse from a partner each year. And whereas 1 in 3 teens, regardless of gender identity, experience abuse from a partner each year. And whereas 117 Pennsylvanians lost their lives to domestic violence in 2017. And whereas the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County serves over 3,000 survivors yearly, and the Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides our community an excellent opportunity to learn more about preventing domestic violence and to show support for the numerous survivors. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Lorraine D. Bell, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and encourage all citizens to support the efforts of organizations such as the DVCCC and to work towards the elimination of domestic violence. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. So I just wanted to share with you guys first our deepest thanks for the support of the Borough of Oxford. It means so much. We've been serving the Chester County community since 1976, and we continue to grow, and it really is with the support of our community. We have such a wonderful community, so let's give you guys a round of applause for that. In that, our office has several outreach locations. One of them is here in Oxford, and a couple weeks ago, I think last weekend on First Friday, we painted Oxford purple for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So if you've been in the borough and noticed the purple ribbons, that was done by Domestic Violence Center. And so we were proud to paint Oxford purple that night. And so Graziella will just tell you a little bit about our services here in Oxford and where you can find services here.
So yes, we are located at the Neighborhood Service Center here in town. And we provide the same counseling services, case management services. We help clients from getting ready for first job interviews and put resumes together, to the financial empowerment curriculum, to just counseling and just support for their healing process. We provide court of compliment. We go on Tuesdays to the district court to offer protection from abuse orders, assistance if needed. And just last fiscal year, I alone served 222 clients here in Southern Chester County through the office. So thank you for your support. Without you, without the community, we wouldn't be able to provide the services we do. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
And they left purple ribbons and some information cards up here. If anybody would like to get some after the meeting, they'll be here.
Thank you.
You guys serve?
Yeah, she's already got two tickets.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to move on to our agenda adoption.
Make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Any additions, deletions, corrections, things we should know?
I don't think we wanted it removed, but under business carried forward, item B, the motion to approve the asset allocation. I'm just going to be requesting that we move that from us because we meet with them tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
So move till November.
Yeah, but we do that during the time.
Yeah, we can table that.
Yeah, okay.
And we're going to move on.
And then I
Item
believe
B.
table B and C, well, yes, under business carried forward, is what Peggy was referring to. Under new items of business, the recommendations and the agreements for market property limited to be postponed until next month. The developer has requested that we don't hear those issues tonight.
Okay, so we have 3 postponements. B under business carried forward, B for new items of business, and C for new items of business. Any other adjustments to be made? Looking for executive session? Come on. So, with only 3 carried forward to next month, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. That moves us into the public comment portion of our meeting tonight. I'm going to ask that everybody stick to the 4-minute time limit. I've asked Ms. Fuller to be our timekeeper, so she's going to press our little time and smack me. Everybody will get 4 minutes. We won't go over, we won't go under. I'm going to cut you off at 4 because I don't want people to think that there's favoritism being showed. Apparently in the past that I've been accused of that. So I'm trying very hard to be very, very neutral here. So the other part of that too is that I'm going to ask that council not respond, that we will have time to respond to the agenda items when we get to the agenda items. So let's move forward with the public being able to give us their comments, ask their questions, and then we'll be able to respond when we get to that part in the agenda so we don't hold up the public comment. Sound fair? And I ask that everybody be respectful, and when you make a comment, if you're able to come up, please come up, because we're for minutes, we're recording this up here as well too. And if you're not able to, we can get to you, or you can just be a little louder. So thank you very much. Is there any public comment? Mr. Henry?
I'm here representing a section of the Oxford Presbyterian Church, and I have a letter that I would like to read from the session. And then also, if I could have a few minutes of your time as a resident and taxpayer. Dear council members, during the regular session meeting of the Oxford Presbyterian Church on October 14, 2018, the session voted 12-0 with 2 abstentions to convey to the Oxford Borough Council that the session does not support the Mulitimodal Transportation Center parking garage. The session cites the following reasons. Number 1, this will severely affect the ability of cars to get into our small parking lots. Number 2, during the workday, there will be difficulty getting into the building for parents dropping off and picking up children from preschool, and for other programs like blood drives, voting, well-dated clinics, and also for church safety. After hours on the weekends, there are numerous church and community activities that occur in the church, and these will be adversely affected by limited accessibility to the building and lack of parking. People attending services or activities at OPC rely on public parking. We only have approximately 26 parking spaces on our property. The closing of both metered parking on Octorara Alley and the public lot will make it impossible for many people to come to OPC and will severely limit access to all of these. Many of our members are elderly and find it difficult to walk long distances. OPC currently has problems with people parking in our lots because they don't want to pay for the metered spot. They have ignored our signs and often are taking spots for people trying to attend church functions or for church employees. We anticipate that this problem will become worse during the construction period. Existing street parking in the area is extremely limited due to the existence of residential permits and restricted parking on Lancaster Pike in front of the public park and the child care center. In addition, the session has several questions that they would like to have answered. We would like to know what plans the borough has in place to provide for alternate parking spots during the construction period. Will some of the rules regarding street parking be relaxed, or will additional temporary slots become available? Where are members and visitors supposed to park during the construction process? Number two, what plans have in place to assure that OPC has full access to emergency services, such as fire, police, and ambulance? And three, what guarantees do we have that the garage will actually remain free on Sundays? Given the amount of money that is to be borrowed into finance, will the borough actually be willing to give up this source of revenue? Thank you for your consideration. The session of the Oxford Presbyterian Church.
Thank you for that. Can you make sure that we all get copies of that? Do you want to speak as a resident now?
Yes. On October the 3rd, I sent an email to council. I have not had a response to that email. But my question basically was to clarify the definition of funding that was addressed when the resolution was passed. It also was addressed in the article that appeared in the Chester County Press. I believe it was on the 22nd of February of 2017. So my question centers around funding. In that discussion, did funding mean grant funding, or did it include grant funding and borrowing money to pay the difference? So that's my question.
Great. Thank you. All right. Who's next? Anybody else?
I live at 241 Penn Avenue in Oxford. And I just have a written statement. I'm not a very good public speaker, so I'm just going to read it. A few months ago, my husband Charles and I became aware that the borough was probably going to build a parking garage. I've had a lot going on in my life, so I came out from under my rock and learned this was going to happen, probably. I was incredulous. Charles was a little indifferent. While I couldn't understand why such a thing would be needed, I looked into the reasoning for it. It still didn't make sense to me. I started talking to people who were more familiar with the subject and became really concerned about it. Over the course of the next few weeks, my husband had occasion to speak with a number of people in the borough, and the subject came up during conversation. These people all told Charles it was the dumbest idea they'd ever heard. We attended a Borough Council meeting. Because speakers who voiced their opinions were sometimes treated dismissively or with hostility, we began to think that maybe Borough Council wasn't willing to listen to Oxford citizens. We spoke with more residents, all of whom had very strong opinions that the garage shouldn't be built. We attended a couple more Borough Council meetings. During one of these meetings, we watched the majority of council condemn the Kelly's property. We continued to inform ourselves the best we could about the issue. My husband and I came to the same conclusion. The parking garage shouldn't be built. We differ in some ways about why. I think it's a terrible idea for many reasons, and that we have many other options to try. I also strongly believe that it's wrong to take the Kelly's property for this thing that a few people want, but that no one needs. Or as a young man on Facebook said yesterday, eminent domain is some seriously nasty stuff and should be reserved for matters more pressing. He stated that he wasn't for or against the parking garage in any big way, but that's a gross way to get it done. I don't know this young man, but I'm proud of him. It also seemed to me that the majority of people didn't want the garage to be built and that their wishes weren't being respected. This last was the main issue for my husband, and he felt very strongly about it. Neither of us was sure that this perception was the reality, however, so we decided that we would circulate a petition and find out for sure how people felt. After some thought and discussion, Charles created his own survey-style petition so that we could record not just which residents were for the parking garage, or against the parking garage, but which residents were for it. We had several different signature sheets, and we enlisted the help of a few other people to help circulate the survey. The results amazed us. Given the choice, 112 of 115 borough residents polled, 97%, requested that the borough not build the proposed structure, figuring for a 99% confidence level, and assuming a borough population of 5,200 people. The potential margin of error of the survey is plus or minus 4.053%. That is, if we extrapolate the survey to the entire population of the borough, there's a 99% level of confidence that at least 93% of the homeowners, residents, and taxpayers of the Oxford Borough do not want the parking garage built. Another 38 people had the option to sign the yes or no petition at Dr. Kelly's office. All 38 chose to sign against the building of the parking garage. Some of those signers were non-residents or lived in Oxford, but not the borough. We have included these sheets in the packet I'm going to give to you, as the numbers are significant, but we're counting them separately as they were presented somewhat differently. I'd just like to conclude with a quick thank you to those people who've been researching this subject for months and years. We're latecomers, but we feel passionately about this nonetheless.
Thank you very much.
I'd just like to present.
Just said I wouldn't respond. And this was sent to us electronically, and every member of council was provided with this as well. You're the key provider. Who's next? Anybody else?
Yes, they are.
Okay, we'll go down that way. Go ahead.
Me?
Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Say a little bit.
Hi, Randy.
Good evening.
Say your name.
Tell Linda who you are, please.
Linda, Randy Keel. This is a little something that is something run across May 16th, 2016. 7 minutes. I'd like to read public comment that Mr. Ashton Doherty brought the question up. Mr. Doherty questioned if there will be enough grants to cover the cost of the parking garage. Mr. Krug said that is our hope. Mr. Doherty said he does not want the cost to fall on the residents. President Hershey said, when we find out how much grant money we are going to get and it don't feel the structure can support itself, we will not move forward. Think heavily on that. One of the other issues, I know the new council room will have a much bigger room, for us to, you don't have to be cramped up all the time. You know how much bigger it is? Anybody check it out? You can put another row of seats in the back. That's all the bigger it is. It's 720, we got 609 right in that square feet. One more row of seats, that's all you're gonna get. That's not big, that's just accommodating. So I think instead of putting retail or whatever in there, you might want to consider making 2 rooms instead of 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Tell Linda your name, please, and your address.
Michelle Bertani. So I guess I have a couple questions.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. Have a couple questions, and I brought something maybe to help you guys answer me when the time comes. I guess my biggest concern is going back through the financials. So, posted July 23rd to the Oxford Historical Facebook page, where parking revenue as reported in the borough's general fund. And then on September 7th, posted again to the Historical Oxford Borough Facebook page, was the current revenue figures that were updated from that point. So, I mean, according to this, revenue as reported in the general fund. The question I have would be why the general fund that's been approved by council is $20,000 higher than what is being shown as actual to the general public. So I've been through it 1,000 times. I've had an accountant look through it. The comparison's there. Year-to-date through July 31st, this would be including the 2 months of parking meters that were excluded on the September 7th posting. So the year-to-date total is $118,108 compared to the period 7 general fund, which when you take out the dog licensing and the other categories there, comes to $132,977. Okay, you can see everything on this one is a side-by-side comparison of all the figures. There was one discrepancy between the 2 Facebook posts, and that's highlighted there for you under section 2 on this, and that only accounts for $335. So I'd like to know why the general fund is showing more revenue than what's been shown to the public via other methods. So, I mean, I can't believe that it's a coincidence when both Facebook posts from the Excel spreadsheet.
And I'm going to stop you for 1 second. Brian and Peggy, do you understand what the question is? Because I want you to be able to answer it. So you do understand the answer to the question? All right. We'll start your timer back up. Are you done? Are you done? I'm sorry.
Well,
I didn't mean to stop you. I was stopping her timer. Go ahead.
I mean, really, that's it. I just want to know why there's a discrepancy that large. Because, I mean, if you look at the bottom and multiply it out, you'll see.
Thank you.
Michelle, can I ask a clarifying question that's been answered? Are you finding that the treasurer's report has more than the number on the website or vice versa?
It has more.
It has more, we have the Arden Limited versus Chrome.
You have a question?
You want to quickly answer?
Okay. Go ahead, answer it.
The way this is set up, we count the revenue monthly, or where the deposits into the general fund, where someone purchased a yearly permit, that's in the general fund. I'm not showing it that way. It'll pick up as we go through the year, instead of having it all 1 month and then less throughout the month. So I'm actually accounting for the permit as the month occurs.
Well, shouldn't that then be reflected in this figure.
It will be as you get through the year, it picks it up.
So we're depositing funds that haven't been accounted for?
No, they've been accounted for. They're accounted for in the entire spreadsheet. But this is
It's
just a
not, I mean,
monthly.
transparency is
So
the
they
biggest issue. we
they
have.
purchase a
Right.
permit for the whole year.
Right.
So it's already gone into the general funds. We already have their money because they purchased it
Right.
for the whole year. But in terms of breaking it out for parking, it's broken out in 12 months. So it's reflected per month, and we haven't reached those months yet. Is that what you're saying, Brian?
Yes.
Yeah, I find it still very odd accounting practice to put numbers out publicly. Every number from the beginning of this through the end of this, there's discrepancies. You can't figure out how projections are done or calculations. There's no rhyme or reason or mathematical formula or equation to reproduce any number across the board. And I'm sorry, I wouldn't feel comfortable moving forward with a $10 million, $9 million, whatever it is today, project without seeing the actual deposit funds.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Richard Winchester. I live at Ware Presbyterian Village. I hope I can stay seated because standing is more difficult for me. I've been coming to many of the meetings, and so council people, I think, pretty well understand my point of view on this question. Those in the audience who are not privy to that knowledge should be aware that in February I submitted a list of questions to the council, and Brian Huber responded to those questions in the middle of March. Some issues remain, but from that list, one of them is the incidental costs, or the incidental costs that are generated by the staff commitment of time to this project. That was one of the questions in my February list. Brian's response was it was just a minimal amount and was not yet then calculated. If we were going to get the total picture of the cost of the garage, those, what I would describe as incidental costs, I'm not sure they're really incidental, I think should be totaled up and accounted for. Just a couple of other points. First of all, I think that you need to be congratulated because I think you've already met one concern about the parking issue. If indeed there was a parking shortage, and there's some discussion about that, let's just set that aside, it's clear there's no parking shortage now. There's plenty of parking spaces on ordinary days in the borough, and I think you accomplished that either intentionally or unintentionally by charging for parking, particularly in the lot behind Black Turtle, rather than having it free. The consequence of that is that that lot, which used to be crowded when it's free, is now pretty, well, a third to 40% empty on usual occasions. I'm not talking about special Fridays. So I think that that has worked out well, and you should get some credit for that. Secondly, the word on the street is that the $800,000 grant that we were hoping to get in these last innings has not come through. And so I'm sure as you debate this later on in the agenda, you will have more accurate figures accommodating that if it's true that the $800,000 is not yet in hand. And so we will then get a total of the borrowing amount, which now seems to me to be somewhere slightly in excess of $3 million. Up until the spring, you'll remember, the estimate was $1.5 billion. And then around, I don't know, April or May, partly because of the soil estimate, it jumped from 1.5 to 3. They are, that's the kind of unexpected expense that I think we need to be wary about as we move forward with this project. That's not the only estimate that didn't come true. I studied the borough's budget on December the 7th last year, and they had some historical data there. The historical data for Budget expenses in 2016 was $25,000. We actually spent $44,000. The estimated expense for 2017 was $35,000. We actually spent $78,000. And the estimate for this year was $36,000, and I know we've spent a heck of a lot more than $36,000 this year. So those estimates have fallen short of the mark. The $1.5 million estimate fell short of the mark. Your timing estimates about when we're going to start this project have fallen short of the mark. So your record on estimates of timing and money have so far been disappointing. I don't know if that's an omen for the future or not, but it would worry some people. My next to last point is that the parking revenue generated by the existing system, according to Brian Hoover's numbers, approximately $245,000 a year. I'm willing to accept that number and accept his conclusion that that is pretty much substantial enough to pay the interest payments on a loan, the interest rates of which have probably gone up a little bit since he got his estimate from Fulton Bank, because interest rates are going up generally. But if we didn't build the garage, that $250,000 of income could be used for a variety of other purposes, meeting a variety of other needs, some of which reasonable people might say are more important than a garage that's being built for the future. In conclusion, I would say that the survey that I had a little bit, I participated modestly in it, clearly indicate that there are an awful lot of people that don't want this garage. It would seem to me an overwhelming majority. And I would conclude by saying that while this has happened more often than not in American history, this is another one of those occasions where we're asking a lot of people, that's a 5,200 population in the borough, to come up with a lot of money, that's a $3 million loan, for the benefit of a relatively small group of important business people, in the hope that the trickle-down consequences will be significant to boost the fortunes of everybody. And I'll just caution you on the historical validity of trickle-down economics.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Thank you. Brian Westcott, Oxford Main Street. Just wanted to ask, I was concerned about the language and the question in the survey. I would ask at some point for the public, for those to be read. My concern is, through the grapevine, and I'm going to take that as such, is that there was some language in one of the questions that mentioned a tax increase. And my concern there is putting language in a question that isn't accurate. So I would just be curious as to what those questions were.
There was no such language in that survey. It was just yes or no.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Chauncey Boyd, lifetime resident of the borough. You've heard tonight, in my opinion, from one of the most respected gentlemen, Dr. Winchester. You heard earlier, and I do admire and respect him, you heard earlier a few months ago from a former mayor, Paul Andrew. And he posed the question to the then sitting council, why couldn't this be put on a referendum? There is still time, and it could be put on a voter referendum, if not a questionnaire or whatever. But based on the discrepancies in the funding, were these statistics that you heard tonight, and also in the ability to this so-called garage to sustain itself. My question to council is, there was also a grant of $1 million given to build or refurbish the existing borough facilities, council facility, Borough Hall. It's my understanding approximately $800,000 of that grant money allocated for that has already been spent towards this ridiculous project. You've heard many tonight say that they are opposed. You are considering building for the future. And incidentally, I hope each one of you can sleep at night pushing the Kellys out into the street via eminent domain. That was a wise young man that posted that statement. Eminent domain is crap. And incidentally, help you sleep tonight, I've already spoke to 2 representatives from the Attorney General's office. If this project goes forward, I promise you a class action suit against the borough and against this project. The majority in a democracy still rules. The majority has spoken, and most of you, or half of you, choose to ignore the majority. That in itself is bold. Think about it long and hard. I don't think you want a lost class action lawsuit. And trust me, it will happen. I promise you. Thank you.
We're back.
Jeff Henry, Borough resident. I have one question. Assuming that the project is built, assuming that the borough borrows $3 million, assuming that the projections are correct, it works. But what happens if those finance projections don't meet the debt service? Is the borough going to be, or the citizens and taxpayers, going to be asked to help fund whatever is due?
Ask the sewer authority.
Any other public comment?
Jim Price, East Nottingham Township. I own 5 properties in the borough, pay taxes on 5 properties in the borough. Nobody circulated the form to me to sign whether I was for or against the garage.
Only borough residents were circulated.
I pay taxes in the borough.
Only borough residents were
I'm a borough resident, one circulated to me.
circulated to every borough resident.
Except for the other 4,800,
Mr.
4,900 that weren't
Talk to us.
circulated till. So anyway,
Thank you.
so my statement is, okay, so we don't do the garage. Does everybody know that the parking lot then goes back to BB&T Bank? So then what happens when BB&T Bank says, hey, let's build condominiums here. Let's sell this off to a private firm. Then we have no parking. We have 0 parking. So the $245,000 that Dr. Winchester is spending because of the revenue from parking, we lose some of that because we don't have a parking lot. I also feel that Oxford, we can continue to go business as usual, day after day after day like we do now. Or we can do this project and we can have endless opportunity. Mine. That's all I have to say.
Sign the note, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
My name is Philip Harris. We are new to Oxford. We actually just moved here today.
Welcome.
We actually just moved here 10 days ago.
Oh my goodness.
I've been following this on Facebook,
Oh my goodness.
the newspaper, and so forth. So, 45 years we've been in southern Chester County, from Unionville, Pennsylvania. My wife and I brought our 2 kids into the school district, and actually our daughter started today, on her first day. I've been watching from the outside. I just, my job, I distribute products to a lot of businesses in town and have for 20 years. So I have a pulse, I think, of what's happening. And to the gentleman behind me's point, someone came to my house this weekend to sign a petition. She's a nice gentleman. We had a brief conversation. When I told him that I support it, didn't want my signature and left. So, you know, all I can say is that I appreciate the effort. I think it's going to be a great project, and I'm here to live my secret.
Just you, Joe?
Anyone else for public comment tonight?
Hi, I'm Mary Lou Bailey. I live on Maryland Avenue. I would say that this project, it's being proactive to a situation versus having a real parking issue and then having to react to that. Thinking in the future, being proactive to something is definitely the right way to be versus having to be reactive to something.
Anyone else? Last call for public comment? No other questions that you want us to address during discussions?
I just wanted to know.
Tell us who you are.
Oh, my name is Donna Hostler, and I am an East Nottingham Township resident. I also used to work in the borough, and I love the borough. But anyway, I just wanted to know how many permits you have sold from the downtown businesses. Just kind of getting a pulse for how many spaces are already sold for the parking structure. I wanted to know how that's going.
I'm Penny Kelly, and I thank everybody who has supported our practice. And I wasn't going to say anything tonight because I was going to say, talk to our lawyer, because we have filed a suit against the borough, as you know. But I want everybody to know, in November of last year, we got a draft that 700 and some square feet were going to be taken for our property. We said, okay, finally we came to an agreement, yes, we can do this. They finally gave us, we were told what we originally asked for to help us through this, and we would work with you. The condemnation papers came, our lawyer called us and said, did you see this? Now it's up to 1,800 square feet, and it includes our landscaping. How in the world does anybody believe anything the council says when we are lied to? Nothing is true. How can we believe these numbers? How can we believe that there's not going to be an increase? How can all this positive information you're giving, how can anybody trust that? That's all I have to say. I wasn't going to say anything tonight. I told my husband, said, people need to know how we've been lied to. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing no further public comment, we'll move on to our agenda.
Are there copies of this agenda available?
They're in the back. If there's any more, I'm not sure how many more.
I guess they're in.
Business carried forward. Mr. Thompson? There's a top ladder. They're all the way back there, and they're filming you, Mr. Thompson.
I vote to approve resolution 1267, 2018, appointing John Reynolds as emergency management coordinator.
I second the motion.
And there is in the packet resolutions from East Nottingham Township and West Nottingham Township.
So let's have some discussion for the people who are unaware of, is John Reynolds here?
Yes.
There he is. We couldn't move forward with appointing Mr. Reynolds as our emergency management coordinator until the other townships signed off that they were in agreement with that to happen, and they have done that. Correct?
Correct. They're right here.
Any discussion with council in regards to moving forward? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Welcome, even though you've been here. Welcome officially.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
B, we have moved We've already
Your
carried
motion
forward.
to table.
For a second? Ron.
John seconded.
Any discussion?
We're moving it forward to November because we are meeting with the pension company tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in the Borough Hall. And because John Thompson and Amanda Birdwell are not able to attend that meeting and are part of the Finance Committee that should be present, I've invited resident and community member David Traynor to sit in on that and perhaps be able to answer questions for John in the meeting that I might not be savvy enough to answer after the interview.
So he's doing that, he's a borough
As a
resident?
resident, he's doing it as a resident.
And Counselor, that's?
For you, but I don't have a concern about it.
Is borough manager also part of that
Oh, yeah,
conversation?
and Arlene will be present, our treasurer also. I just felt that it was too much responsibility for one person on the committee to hold.
Is there anybody else from council that could join you?
You had indicated that you
No,
wanted
but I wonder if Bob or Ron or Phil would be able to, as opposed
It's 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. If you can come in, come in.
You can do it?
Okay, good, great, thanks.
Depends a little on the weather.
Great, great. So then we'll move on that in November, but we'll have recommendations, probably we'll have discussion about it in committee?
In committee in November.
Great, thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Back to you, Ms. Russell.
Okay, last month we had a motion to ask an outside auditing firm to give a look at the figures and the revenue and expenses of the upcoming project under construction. And I met with Arlene, our treasurer, went with me. Brian Hoover was out of town on a scheduled vacation that had been scheduled a year in advance. So Mrs. Harrison accompanied me. We went to meet Donald Pierce of Maley Partners, and he sent a letter which I will read to council, and they have received a copy of it. Dear Ms. Russell, it was a pleasure meeting with you earlier this week to discuss your transit center / parking garage project for the Borough of Oxford. As discussed, we have not audited, reviewed, or compiled any projected financial statements or schedules regarding the project or the construction of a new borough building. Therefore, we are not providing an opinion on any such projected financial statements or schedules or the feasibility of the project. However, as you requested, below is a summary of some of the items we discussed and some other observations that you may wish to consider as you proceed with the project. First, the summary schedule of the project which you have provided, copy attached, shows $800,000 of 2019 CRP funding that you indicated is not available. Therefore, the total loan amount in each scenario will increase by $800,000. This will increase interest expense and total loan payments during the term of the loan. Second, you also shared some financing alternatives with me that indicated fixed principal payments each year plus interest. In this situation, your loan payments in the early years of the loan will be significantly higher than loan payments in the later years. You should consider scheduling out your projected cash inflows and outflows on an annual basis during the term of the loan so you can plan your cash needs. Also, projections should be updated if financing terms change from those previously anticipated. Number 3, the summary schedule assumes maintenance costs of $1,400,000 over the 20-year term, or $70,000 per year. Based on the information you provided, this appears to be comprised of $2,400 for accounting expense, $2,500 for insurance, $14,450 for payroll and taxes, $39,780 for repairs and maintenance and other operating expenses, $1,320 for service contracts, $2,500 for supplies, $5,000 for utilities, and $2,050 for contingencies. As previously discussed, when projecting annual cash inflows and outflows, you should consider any projected cost increases in future years due to inflation, cost of living adjustment, operational changes, and other factors. Point 4. The summary schedule assumes construction costs of $6,941,970. However, this amount appears to be based on bids received for construction. Have all other legal and engineering costs been considered for bank financing, site development, permits, and other costs? I would anticipate additional costs that haven't been considered on the summary page. Point 5, I was not provided with any detail regarding the construction costs for the new Borough Hall. However, the total cost for that project should include all construction costs, as well as any legal and engineering costs required during construction. In addition to the above, please keep in mind that with any forecast or projection, there will usually be differences between the forecasted and actual results because events and circumstances frequently do not occur as expected, and those differences may be material. Forecasts and projections are based on underlying assumptions. Actual results may not always occur as assumed. However, it is important for users of the forecast or projection to understand the underlying assumptions used in the forecast or projection. Some of them were significant assumptions to be considered when projecting revenues and expenditures for your new Borough Hall and Transit Center / parking garage include estimating construction costs, including legal and engineering fees and contingencies for unanticipated costs during construction, calculating projected debt services costs, and projecting future revenues. Therefore, it is important for you to consult with your bank, engineers, and attorneys to update these costs in your projections as the project moves forward. In addition, projecting future revenues are often one of the most difficult assumptions to develop in any projection, and actual results do not always occur as expected. Therefore, I often recommend that revenues be developed conservatively and that different scenarios be presented to show projected results using a range of capacity and usage assumptions that may be possible. I do see from some of the support that you provided that management has been developing various revenue projections, and I concur with their efforts and encourage them to continue to update future budgets and projections as historical trends become more evident. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I wish the borough success with their future projects. Now,
Okay. So thank you, Peggy. We got this, I guess, you got that late Saturday or
I got it
Sunday?
Sunday at 12:34, he sent it on Sunday.
And I saw it this morning. So when I saw it this morning, I forwarded it on to Brian and Stacy as well as all of council and mayor so that everybody could have that information. And then contacted Brian. Since Brian was on vacation, he didn't have the opportunity to meet with the auditor, talk with the auditor directly. So I asked him to reach out to Mr. Pierce and see if he was willing to have a conversation, which Brian and Arlene also joined him, since Arlene had the opportunity to go with you, to talk about some of the questions that he posed. So Brian, do you want to have you want to talk about what your
I can tell you
conversation
what
was?
we discussed.
Yeah.
He had no questions. He was okay with the figures that we had given him. He saw that we were using actual revenue for the future projections. The $800,000 grant is still in play. I'm not sure where you got that it isn't in play. That's a 2019 CRP grant. That is not the RACP grant that we were discussing a long time ago. So that grant is still in play. If in fact we do get that grant, the total financing then comes to $1.22 million is what the project financing would be.
Is that assuming that we use the capital project for some of it?
That was
Just capital
assuming
funds?
we use
That's
the
assuming that we
$1.3 million capital
Yes.
project. I'm not sure where you got the information on the payments for the loan. So if
From the amortization schedule that you emailed me from Fulton.
Okay, so the one that we've looked at the entire time has been a 20-year fixed rate loan. And in all my projections, it's included in that projection is a fixed rate flat across 20 years, so that projecting revenue and expenses is easier. And he was not aware of that. He said he only thought that you had one. And that wasn't correct. That was on that paper that Fulton gave us. There were 3 or 4 options, but the only one that I've been working with is a 20-year straight fixed rate, similar to a mortgage. And that, again, like I said, if we utilize the funds that are available to the borough, that leaves a loan amount of $1.223 million. I'm not sure where all the other figures are coming from, the 3 to 5 to $8 million.
Brian, can you just clarify how much in that scenario we would be taking out of the capital fund?
Okay, so we have 3 funds that we're working with in the capital fund. The building fund has a balance left in it of $376,000 when I put this sheet together, of which I believe $300,000 is not committed. So that money would be moved over to be utilized. The gift fund has $228,000 in it. There's a balance in there of uncommitted funds of about $200,000. It could also be utilized for this project. And the capital projects fund, which is meant to fund exactly projects like this, a capital project, has $242,000 or $742,000 in it. So there's $1.3 million available in our construction projects funds. It can be utilized at the start of this instead of financing. We would also then use other funds that are available in the borough to fund the 1-year construction, so that at the end we would then finance the balance. And the reason that you do that is currently the money that's sitting in the account is getting 0.88% interest. If you end up borrowing money for a year, it's going to cost you about 4.5 to 4.6% interest for a 1-year $1 million or $2 million loan. So you actually save $89,000 a year by utilizing your own money. And there's no loss to the money in the budget. On the interest for the $1.3 million, we're currently collecting about 0.05 interest on that per year. So the loss in interest revenue using that money for the project is about $673 a year. But the savings in the end over the 20-year time is closer to $600,000.
I would just like to clarify, in response to your question about where I got all the figures, in everything,
I gave you a lot of figures.
in everything that's been handed out over the last
I
year,
don't argue.
and trying to sort through them all.
Yeah, he was under the impression that that was the loan we were looking at, and that in fact wasn't the case, and I did explain that to him, and he said he was fine, that that's the better way to do it. And when I showed him and went through the numbers, he understood the numbers. And he said he understood the numbers, but as an accountant, he would have done it in a little bit of a different format.
Well, yeah.
But he concurred that...
Yeah, he did make that
Yeah,
observation.
he concurred that my revenue numbers are correct, and he agreed with them. And he agrees that the revenue covers the cost of the garage, including maintenance and the loan.
I'm sure you're paraphrasing, because he told me not to use the word correct.
Yes.
That was a dangerous thing to do, that he understood the figures.
That's correct.
He understood the figures, yeah. In response to using the $1.3 million of general fund, I would just have to say, and I have to admit this is not an original thought, it's come from many people, that is taxpayer money. And we did say that we were not going to use taxpayer money to fund this garage. That's taxpayer money because that money's been accumulated in the fund from taxes that were paid by residents.
Okay, so I can address that for you. Current taxpayer revenue in the general fund budget is about $2 million. The general fund budget is about $4 million. So only half of the general fund budget is funded by taxpayer dollars. The rest are funded by parking revenue, building permit fees, and the cuts that we've made over the last 2 years to make the borough more efficient. And that's how we build it up. We didn't raise taxes on the residents. We didn't gain the money from the residents. We actually gained it from user fees for people working on properties in the borough, building homes. $240,000 has come in this year, just in parking revenue. So that's where the $700,000 buildup came from, not taxpayer revenue.
I think when we say that we cut expenses, we save taxpayer money.
We save general fund budget money.
I think all of the money is public money that we hold in trust because we have an obligation. So I don't think that the point of whether it's a parking revenue versus taxpayer money is germane. It's money that we are spending on things for the public. It's not like ours to.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that it's meant for capital projects. That's why it's labeled capital projects. That's why the $1 million that was donated was for the construction of the Borough Hall. And we tend to forget that what we're constructing here in big part is the new Borough Hall. So that money, at some point, the taxpayers would have to fund if we didn't build it this way. And in this case, the transit revenue actually pays for the Borough Hall with minimal public dollars, meaning Oxford Borough public dollars being invested in the project.
Peggy, when you spoke with Doug here, did he speak to it all, whether he thought it made sense to project future parking revenue based on just like a mean of 7 months of current revenue? Like, did he say that he thought that's what was saved? It may have been out of the scope of what he thought he was.
Right, yeah, I don't think that he addressed that specifically, but I do think he addresses all revenue projections in the letter when he says that we need to be a little bit more conservative in, maybe not, I'm not saying be a little bit more conservative, I'm just saying, that's why I wanted to read the letter, because I don't like, yeah. And actual results do not always occur as expected. Therefore, I often recommend that revenues be developed conservatively and that different scenarios be presented. Yeah.
Which is what we've done. We didn't project increases in revenue because we wanted to show that the facility could pay for itself without having to project increases. In the bottom of this last copy, it showed a projected increase in what it does to the bottom line. If everything functions and stays the same, the total benefit to the taxpayer on a loan, if we borrow $1.2 million, total benefit to the general fund or surplus of $2.8 million from the transit center fund over 20 years.
And I would like to add that Arlene and Mr. Pierce and I all believe that Mr. Hoover has spent endless hours on this in documenting and working it. And he knows these figures inside out and backwards. He believes in them. And when you check the accuracy of any of the figures are accurate.
Got a verbal threat ready.
Why don't you grab him and take that side?
All right. I wish that wouldn't happen, but I'm glad that we're gonna move right on. So can we move on from the audit? Everybody have any questions that Peggy can answer? Or that, yeah.
Well, we don't have the bill because we have to include the conversation of today, and we didn't know what that would be. It's gonna be under the $1,500 that was approved.
Great, thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Peggy. I appreciate you searching out and
You're welcome.
jumping through hoops to find.
You're welcome. This was
your due diligence. I appreciate it.
a fun project.
All right, so we're gonna move on, and it's still you, Peggy, so don't get too comfortable over there.
Okay, well, we have on the agenda to make a motion to hire a part-time codes clerk. However, the personnel committee did not meet, so we did not have an opportunity to address this. But I did hear from the staff while you were away that this is kind of an urgent matter so that we can clear up a backlog of work. And it would not be prudent to put that off until the third Monday of November. So I'd like to make the motion, and then I would invite you to clarify and give us some update. I'm going to make a motion that we hire a part-time codes clerk
Is there a
in the
second?
borough office.
Discussion.
John, Brian,
So-
can you
so,
address that, please?
The job is a full-time job. We currently have a part-time clerk. And she's just continuously falling behind. Her job has ballooned into what is and truly should be a full-time position. She can't work full-time. So she's asking for some help. Doesn't have to be permanent, but to get caught up on the filing. She's not able to get any of the filing done. She comes in on Saturdays on occasion to work just to get things done, because while she's in the office, of course, she's dealing with contractors and all the other work she's going on.
And can I just add a little bit? She contacted me about trying to get the website updated, and she asked if we could come over and do lunch at her house on a Saturday, and that's what the kind of person she is, and that doesn't need to be the case, so she needs.
So she is handling the website, all the updates on the website. She's very talented with it. So we've thrown jobs at her that don't fit in codes, but she's willing to accept them, but she's falling behind the girl.
I also witnessed that she is somebody who can actually do 2 or 3 things
One time.
effectively at one time. Like, I think that I can do it, but I'm not sure I'm effective at it.
And
she really pulled it off.
Right, she does. And she also is responsible for the trifold mailer that comes out with your water bill that was just put on that position over the last year and a half.
So do you think you'll have interest in a part-time employee? I mean, have you heard of anybody expressing an
I
interest?
haven't looked around yet, but I don't think it would be an issue to find.
Are you talking half-time, 20 hours a week, or more than that?
Maybe 20 hours a week,
But not really.
not more than 20 hours.
Are they required to have any experience at all, or just someone that's to help out in the office?
Typically filing, getting things caught up, including me.
How will you advertise this position?
I believe if we put it on Facebook, we'll be more than enough issues squared away, get people to come out. I've heard that people have already said they'd be interested. I have not talked.
And it'll be on the website.
Any more discussion? We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New items of business.
Like it'll be over China somewhere.
Who has the motion?
I make a motion to award the bid for the transit center, Borough Hall, to CPS Construction in the low base bid amount of $7,346,000, minus the credit for Oxford billing permits in the amount of $404,030, Total bid amount, $6,941,970. Sorry.
Try again.
$6,941,970.
$6,941,970. Contract amount, CPS Construction.
Yes. Minus the credit for the permits at $404,030.
Okay, so we need a motion and a second so we can have this. Oh, I'm
Sorry,
sorry, we need a second.
And
So we need a
Ron
discussion. All right. So now we have discussion, and I believe that most of the public comment was regarding this issue. So I would like to do due diligence to answer the questions that were posed to us throughout public comment. So can we start there? Would that be fair?
Sure, I would just like to thank John for taking that over, because my name was on it on the agenda, and I know that everybody saw the irony in that.
We don't let you read it.
Was that planned?
All right, so some of the first questions, I think probably are Brian, have a drink of water or something, because I think a lot of the questions are gonna be.
Or something.
Or something. The beginning questions were regarding Oxford Presbyterian Church. They talked about limited parking, limited access, restricted parking. Can we start with those things?
Yes, so we did develop a temporary parking plan for replacing the spots in the lot into a different location. We are actually turning 2nd Street one way, going towards 472, and then turning left on Coach Street will be one way, and turning left on the Western Terrace will be one way. So that loop, and added parking in the lots above the Borough Hall on 4th Street by the police station, and parking at the police station for permitted vehicles makes up over the 77 spaces that are lost from the lot.
And Octorara Alley will be 2 ways.
Octorara Alley will be converted to a 2-way, so that people coming in to drop off their children will come in, they can come in off of 472, they can come in off of Locust, come down, turn right onto Octorara Alley, turn left into the Presbyterian Church parking lot, drop their children off underneath the underpass that they have, and then exit back onto Octorara Alley.
So they'll be able to make the loop
They'll be able
without
to make
having
the loop
difficulty
and come
access.
right back out again, and then exit out to 472.
The do not enter sign would be before, right at 2nd Street.
Right, so the
right
second,
at the
so
upper alley.
right, correct. So we will have a do not enter sign just after Octorara Alley coming from 472.
So they can either make a left.
And, right, so they can make a left into there, they can make a right on Coach Street and come around either way.
And I know, Brian, before you went on vacation, we had talked about dropping that off at the library and at the church.
I did drop it off at the library, I did not get to the church.
Okay, but you will this week.
I will get to the church with it, so they are well aware of what we're doing.
Brian, the Octorara is 2-way only up to the church?
Up to
Doesn't
the
go all
back
the way
of
out
the,
to
right, no,
Third
it's
Street.
only 2-way up to the back of the Oaks.
Right, okay.
And it's 1-way coming off of 3rd Street, which,
As it is, yeah.
as it is today. So they can come in that way, which I think is a little bit dangerous, but they can come in that way and make a right into the parking lot, or they can come in from Octorara Alley in the opposite direction, turn left into the parking lot and exit out. They also have the ability, if they chose to do so, would be to drop children off on Coach Street and walk them across. So there's plenty of ability to get the kids in and out. Wow.
Was there a question about parking for
So the
Sunday
parking,
services?
right, so Sundays is open parking for the church services.
For all day?
For all day.
Well, but not during construction.
Well, no, because it won't be there, but the parking.
I mean, that's what you're talking
Right.
about during construction.
So,
But there's no need, I mean, it's.
right, so they can park anywhere, like 2nd Street coming off of Locust will have paid parking on the left side. It'll be 14 meters, not meters, but 14 meter spaces that can be paid for at the kiosk.
On Sundays.
Not on Sunday.
Right, it's
On
free.
any other meeting night that they
Right.
had. They were asking about other
Right,
meeting
right, right.
nights.
Right.
They can park on 2nd Street all the way down from Locust to Coach Street, parking on the right-hand side and the left-hand side of Coach Street, because now it'll be one way going towards Western Terrace. And the same thing on Western Terrace, you'll have parking on both sides of Western Terrace going out, which is a substantial amount of parking.
Now that Coach Street, that's what we have marked on the drawing as permit parking only 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Correct. That's,
So,
that's
for residents.
That's for residents that are parking in the lot. We have about 40 cars that are in the lot right now with parking permits. And they're gonna move from there out to Coach Street and park there.
So I guess we haven't addressed where the parishioners will park on Sunday morning.
Sunday morning they can park because they can park at the park. They can park on Coach Street. They can park on Western Terrace. They can park in front of the beginnings, right beginnings, because they're not open, so you'll have those parking spaces available as well.
And there are 26 there are 26 spots in their parking.
Right.
That they currently have.
But I guess I'm still confused about the Coach Street, because the parishioners will not be parking there. The residents and those who have residential permits will be parking
Right, but it's free parking on Sunday.
Right, but I mean,
So they could park on Coach Street, or they could park on Western Terrace.
In other words, if they pull up there and there's not a resident park there, they can park.
Well, sure, I understand, but I'm just thinking that residents are.
And I'll
home on the
clarify with the
weekend.
Presbyterian Church so that they're.
Well, right now, there's only one parking on one side of the street.
Well, one
One
car
way,
parking.
parking on two sides.
But now they park in the parking lot.
I
They
understand.
certainly don't have 70 spots, because there's already 40, you know, we don't have to find 70 spots for Sunday morning, because currently, they're using that parking lot on Sunday morning, but there's already other cars there also. They don't have an empty lot.
Mr.
That's
Hamlin,
70
do you
cars.
know what the attendance typically is at a Presbyterian church on Sunday?
Around 190 between those services.
But they're not all bringing cars.
So that might be
Two separate services.
two separate services and maybe.
They'll one
two
be
to
parking
some
at the same
cars.
time.
Yeah.
Correct.
But I'll reach out to the church.
May I ask if that, whatever responses could be sent to the session committee? So that
Sure.
I can send them a copy of the plan.
All right, so I think that addressed the questions that were brought by the church.
Well, there's a couple, full access EMS.
Oh,
Which they will-
sorry, full access
They'll have
EMS.
full access straight across. Octorara Alley will be made open for full access, and they can come in from, I don't know why they would, but they can come in off of Second Street.
And 5 would be, as of now, the council, we're not taking a change in Sunday parking, not free. So, to me, it's not an issue. Sunday parking in the borough is free, and I don't think anybody on council is looking to change that.
Can we put more spots on Coach in the, between the church and the preschool, or no, is that pretty much full?
There is, on the right-hand side by Bright Beginnings, it's posted 15-minute parking for drop-offs, but they can utilize that
On Sundays.
on Sunday, right.
Thank you for those responses.
Thank you. Mr. Teal.
Well,
Give me
well,
short.
it was a public comment that brought this question up. I just have one question. How does this correlate to the parking lot? I mean, what is the purpose of doing all this moving around of Octorara Alley?
So,
You
yeah.
still keep 9 parking meters there. There's more parking spaces, you got 9 more.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next question, was to clarify, this was Jeff's too, clarify the funding, whether it be grant or borrowing.
Currently, there are $3.6 million in grants that have been received for the building of the Borough Hall and Transit Center. With the $1.3 million building fund, the capital projects funds, we have a total loan there's actually 5 scenarios, but I'll give you the 2 straight scenarios. There is one with $800,000 projected from the CRP grant, the $1.3 million in the transit center in capital projects money, leaves a total loan value of $1.223 million. The total loan interest on a 7.5-year term loan is $225,954.
What's that?
On a 7.5-year loan, the loan interest on $1.3 million is $225,954.
That's a monthly payment.
No, that's the interest. No, that's the interest.
Oh, that's the interest.
That's the interest. In the end, total cost benefit to the cost or benefit to the taxpayers over 20 years, using just current revenue dollars, projects $2,288,000 in surplus funds being returned to the general fund over the 20 years. And then adding back any increase, if you add back an increase of 103 cars, we're bringing the parking garage or the parking lot to 60%. At 7 hours a day, generates $3,856,000 in revenue. Total return to the general fund is $6,144,000 over 20 years.
None of what you just said is on that latest handout that I have, is that correct?
Yeah, this is the same handout. It's on the bottom.
So, are you coming down the second aisle?
No, I'm
the
coming
second
down,
column?
that was the fourth line.
7.5 years.
7.5-year loan.
Yeah, I see it.
So the-
Loans
so-
and
So the
grants, I think
funding,
is the short
the
answer.
term funding presume grants and loans.
Yes,
in the
grants and
original
loans.
comments.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the transit center then makes more than enough money to pay the loan and provide excess revenue to the general fund. That's what the entire scenario shows, and pays it off in 7.5 years. The other one that I just added that you don't have is taking the $800,000 out, because you asked the auditor, you told the auditor it wasn't available. If I take the $800,000 out, that leaves a loan of $2,023,000. And at the end, using and that would expense out over 20 years. But then the loan interest jumps to $895,000 because you're expensing it out over a longer period of time. So every effort that we can make to do this in a shorter period of time saves the general fund a lot of money.
So this is in fact the most current.
That's the one prior to today.
That's right before he went on vacation.
Right.
That was the-
And the one that you're looking at right now, do
Right.
I have that?
No, you don't. This was just done at 4 o'clock today.
Okay.
And that was the only difference between this
At
one
4 o'clock today in preparation for the meeting.
for the meeting tonight.
And it was specifically to address the 800,000.
All I did was address what was in the letter.
Taking out the
And took put another column in and addressed it that way.
Right.
Pauline, discuss that 800,000 possibility, or is that something?
Well, the county has asked us to put in an application.
We are not done trying to get funding for this project, and as long as we keep our nut to crack where it is, we still have a shot of bringing down the borough's debt burden. We are talking with the county about submitting a new CRP application in the spring, and we are talking about an $800,000 submission. I cannot today predict whether or not we will get that, but the county has been receptive to that possibility, and with the understanding that this is the last time we're going to ask them, that this is really, they've already invested close to $1.1 billion in this infrastructure project. So we will do that. RACP will likely open again beginning of the year. I suggest that we resubmit. It won't cost us anything to do that, and I still think that that's a possibility to help us because of the itemization and the way RACP works. As long as you began construction after the date of the itemization, your costs are eligible. So RACP and CRP are probably the only two public funding programs we have right now where you can begin construction and still have your costs be eligible for reimbursement. And so our advice would be to pursue that as you begin construction. because it enables you to keep the cost down. If you wait and rebid, the cost goes up, and now our gap is bigger.
Does that clarify the funding?
Well, I do have a question, but I know that we're addressing residents'
Yeah.
questions first.
Okay. I don't believe you had a question. I believe you brought us your survey. So there was no outstanding question that you had for us.
I would just like to address this gentleman here.
Could you speak a bit louder,
I would
please?
just like to address this gentleman here who said somebody didn't want his signature. No.
Okay. It's absolute fact. It wasn't confrontational.
Okay. All right. We're gonna have to move on from that. We'll have to move on from that. So then there was, Mr. Teal had the question of new council room. And actually, I'd like Mr. Krug to address that for us, if you could. So the question is, sorry, can you do that? You mean you don't have it memorized in your brain? So the question actually came up during our last committee meeting. Randy and Bob were looking at the measurements of our current borough hall. Our current borough hall room where we all fit into sardines, thus while we're here.
Gross square footage.
Okay. So they determined, you guys mind if I speak for you, or are you? That the new projected council room was not much larger than the current one that we have. So can you please speak to that? Because I believe that probably troubles many of us.
I use gross square footage, which includes,
Could you speak louder, please?
I use gross square footage, so my numbers are going to be different if you use net square footage. So the existing community room.
Can you explain to those of us who are
Gross
architects
square
the
footage
difference?
includes all the wall thicknesses. Existing community room gross square footage is 540 square feet, and the proposed meeting room is 790 square feet. So that's roughly a 46% increase.
Now, can I address one thing on that? There's over 100 square feet of unusable space right now in the Borough Hall that has,
Wait, so can I ask a question before you go on with that? That area is just the meeting area. That doesn't include the offices or any of that space, correct?
Do you know what the net
Sorry,
square
Brian.
footage is?
I have
You don't.
Brian and I figured that out today by looking at the plans and.
Ron, nobody can hear you.
Brian and I looked at that today by looking at the plans and adding up the dimensions. And then I actually measured the existing borough hall with the tape measure, not counting blocks. And it's 477 square feet net inside. So, but there's probably 100 square feet, 70 square feet that's not usable because of the safe and the desk back in the corner.
The floor square footage is 720 feet for the new plan, or the floor plan, and it's 609 for our present borough hall.
No, it's 477. I measured it with a tape measure today. It's 18 by.
I said floor plan.
26.
Bob and I measured it down the last meeting.
Well, let's, so let's, what can you tell us, Steve? So you're telling us, no, I think he's doing, so essentially, you're telling us that the new Borough Hall meeting room will be 50% bigger, 40% bigger than the current one.
But that's including the wall.
46% larger.
Wall to wall.
46% larger. But we're also gaining a caucus room where right now when you go into executive session, people have to leave. You're also gaining a caucus room right next door that the council will exit and go into a caucus room that will have space for tents. I don't have the plan.
Steve, could you guess, is the one being built bigger than this room?
No.
If I took from, it's close in size, not including all that stuff behind you guys.
So like from our table
It
on,
might be a little further forward than that, but it's close.
thank you.
3/4 of this room.
Yes.
Maybe a little more.
Yeah, I think the seating capacity was 50. Right now, we have about 22, I think.
By code, we sized it to be at 49 or 50.
49 or 50
Pretty much
seats.
how we figured.
And you have 32 residents here today.
However,
And we've laid it out with that many seats in it.
when you're talking about the current Borough Hall, you're talking about simply that meeting room that we're currently meeting in.
Just the
Correct.
meeting room.
Not with the idea that we would move the offices back to the back where nothing is being done and open that other space up for residents to sit, where the desks are now and where they come in to pay the water bill, and that, if we restructured that.
Well, you would have to you'd have to tear out a wall, which is a supporting wall, and move Arlene's office out and move the water department out to try to combine that, which is not I don't know that you can physically do that. The total square footage of the current Borough Hall is 2,175 square feet, that's exterior wall measurement. The new proposed Borough Hall is 3,131 gross square feet, not including the 1,368 square foot of exterior covered storage that we have attached to the Borough Hall. So it's roughly, again, 44% larger than the current Borough Hall.
Thank you. Michelle. You said you understood her question, so I'm gonna let you have at it. Parking in the general fund on 723.
He actually kind of answered.
I think he did. He did answer it, didn't include everything. Right, thank you.
And I just would like to say that I had questions about that, and I spent much time calculating all of that out, and I am in agreement with the figures that are on there.
Well, could you elaborate on that? Is that okay? Like how many annual permits have been sold?
Right now there's 87 paid annual permits, 17 bank permits that are on there. I don't have the sheet in front of me to tell me the exact breakdown of it, but we do have, I think, a dozen yearly paid permits.
Here, Brian.
I'm sorry, you have it? I tried to prepare myself and bring as much as I could, but that I didn't.
I just copied this off of
Yeah, it's added.
This is the quarterly.
So say 35 the yearly permits on there. There's quarterly, there's 10, 20, 24, 28 quarterly permits. So when the revenue comes in, it goes into the general fund and it shows up as a deposit. What I do in this spreadsheet here is calculate the actual usage of the lot by the number of permits that are sold for that month. That's the difference. But the dollar value is already in the general fund.
Okay, so then they're just broken down.
They're broken down by month.
$720.
Correct. Correct.
And the next month, you'll see more of that money allocated on that first sheet that shows up in the
So it'll
general.
continue to grow until the entire year.
Could you run those numbers by here?
No.
87 total?
87 total.
Plus 17 for the math.
Plus 17. 103 permits. And they fluctuate depending on the time of the year. That's pretty much what's there now at 87. It goes up when H&R is in the building, H&R Block, because they have 13 or 14 employees.
So during the month of January, February, March, and part of April, those numbers escalate by the number of employees that they hire.
She gave me the gavel, so she can run the restroom.
Oh my God, that's dangerous.
However, reading her notes, the next question I think was from Mr. Winchester with regard to the incidental costs, the staff costs associated with the garage.
It's almost impossible. We don't track employees' costs because we don't do it right now in the lot. We're not changing the amount of usage in the lot. We're picking up trash, we're sweeping it, we're doing whatever we have to do in all the lots in the borough. So that's just a one lump sum amount of money that we budget for, and that's how it gets expensed out.
But it will have to be broken down because we are going to have a separate parking fund in the 2019 budget.
We can certainly do that, but then we should put the parking revenue in a separate fund to pay for it as well.
You have to. You have to put the parking fund.
Then the money doesn't go in, then the excess funds don't go into the general fund. They get parked in that parking revenue fund for future parking revenue expenses.
I think it's wise.
No, I'm okay with that. I'm just saying, at the way we're set up right now, if it goes into the general fund, it could be used to reduce taxes or whatever.
All along about having a separate parking fund.
Right, and we certainly can do that, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and just like you currently allocate part of your income, your salary, and part of the treasurer's salary to water, police,
correct,
and general, then it would be spread out over also to include the parking fund. And
correct.
If
in fact I had anything to do with anything going on in the garage facility, that time would be spent there.
well, I can't imagine you're not.
You can't see with a whole bunch of concrete. Anything could occur.
I mean, if you look at Kennett Squares, Mr. Scalise has his averaged out over the different funds.
Sure, and I do the same thing.
Right, and you're doing, so we just need to include the parking fund too.
You're right.
So then you'll rework that preliminary budget that you presented last month so that we can see the parking fund for the.
I can remove them from the general fund budget.
Yeah.
I can put them in their own, and then all of the checks written for the parking garage, as far as loans and whatnot, will come out straight out of parking revenue. That would also indicate if there's any increase in the general fund, that it would be an increased burden on the taxpayers that wouldn't be related to any increases in the parking in the transit facility.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Come on, baby.
Oh my God, you're take that.
All right, so we're gonna move right down to, talk about that. The question, I believe, back to Mr. Henry, what happens if it doesn't meet the projections? Who will fund the project?
Well, as we just discussed, the project, if we do it the way Peggy would like to do it, the project will fund itself. We are using current revenue figures. There is no reason to anticipate that the current revenue generated by parking in the borough would go down. Understanding that there is a current boom in the downtown district with stores moving in to the downtown, with properties being sold for other expansion opportunities. So I see no reason to project anything but increases in revenue.
I will just say back to that I think that the economy is also growing a lot right now.
Sure.
And if that stops, presumably businesses, I mean, if it contracts, that's going to affect the number of people, the businesses here, the number of people.
Economies go up and down.
So I think that in that case, it's not wise to think we can only go up. Like if the economy goes up and down, then parking revenue would go up and down as well.
That's kind of something you can't predict.
That's right. That's why you have confidence in the rules, and that's why you have
Even so, the confidence level is so much.
What projection numbers were based off of not actual, and I can agree with that.
I mean, I will say that when you do predictions of numbers typically in research or in financial predictions, you generally do have, like what the gentleman, Charles Stecker, had a confidence interval where you say, okay, well, there's a margin of error, so within this percentage degree of confidence, 90% or 95%, I would say that it would be here, but it's never certain. You could never be certain that what's happening now, and in general, before you would determine that you would want to use just the mean, you would kind of look at how consistent your data is. Is it a normal curve or is it a skewed curve? And when we look at ours, we see $2,000 one month, $15,000 the next, because our way of collecting the money wasn't consistent. So I think we would want to be much more conservative than we have been in making this prediction. That's just my
You're
feeling.
discussing you're discussing Citadel Bank dollars, where the money would sit at BB&T.
Yeah.
It wasn't a change in the actual parking usage.
Right, but because
It was a
we
change in
don't know how
deposited
much
dollars,
that we were
which
getting
is
money
two different things.
Right.
So when you average it out, it's the same, because the money always hits the same.
We don't, you're saying that we get the same amount of money month to month?
It's relatively close to the same.
And how do you know that? Because I haven't seen those numbers. I've seen numbers.
It's in all of our numbers.
It's in the mayor's report every month too.
It's in the same exact report every month.
What
However,
month
that
was
was
it that
just
we
corrected.
started with, what month was it that we started with
March,
Citadel?
May.
March,
Well, you got
March.
dates.
So since March.
Yeah.
Yeah, so since
So we
March,
have March, April,
the
May.
average revenue, average monthly revenue.
There's a copy, so.
That's 7 months.
Correct, 7
This
months.
is 20-year loan.
Well, I mean, yes.
Yeah, but,
You can
I
only
mean, you
create
gotta
what you
figure
have.
when the garage opens, you know that revenue's gonna go up, it's not gonna go down.
Why does it go up because there's a garage there?
Because we're adding that many spaces that are easy
But we're not at
parking.
capacity.
But where are
It's
the?
available revenue, it's available parking
It's
close to the
available
downtown.
parking that will be used, I
But
mean,
we
if it's
have
a
that in the
95-degree
parking lot
day,
now.
you're parking.
Parking now.
If it's 95 out, you're gonna park in the garage, you're far out in front.
So just to comment on what Amanda's saying is, how are we expecting the parking spaces to be used? And that's because of the businesses that are trying to come here, that want to come here, that have employees that will be working here. So as the desire to come here and be a business in this town increases, so will the customers increase. And there are 3 new stores that are currently under construction that will be bringing in employees and therefore bringing in more customers as well. And so the expected uses of the parking facilities, whether they be lots, metered parking, or a garage, should be expected to go up if we have new businesses coming in. So those numbers are reasonable to expect.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but there's no way to quantify our feelings about these businesses. It's kind of like you saying that I think my husband's very talented. I'm not going to project what his salary is going to be in 20 years.
I didn't mean to sound like I was trying to quantify what the businesses do. I just know that when a business comes in, if they're bringing in 8 employees, then they will need parking for those. And if this business is bringing in a constant turnaround with, you know, people coming to the artist to get more work done, then there's going to be a constant flow. You know, we're not saying that these businesses are or are not going to be highly successful, just that the fact that there are businesses coming and they will have employees and they will have customers, there will be more spaces.
So now, about those 3 parking, or those 3 businesses, they're the ones that were projected to open August 1st, because you and I were gonna be there to get our tattoos.
Right.
But it's already October and they're not open.
So it's not, there's a lot of money that's needed to open a tattoo shop, and so he
But I
has
mean,
been advertising for artists, and so he's.
And how about the second? I know the phone place is open.
Boost Mobile opened already.
There will be another one open that can't be said what it is or whatever, but there is, that is under construction, and they're shooting for Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, okay, thanks, that was my question.
And we can also note that that an attorney bought the property across the street from that location.
The old Winnie Sebastian.
The old Winnie
Yes.
Sebastian. And is reconstructing that property as well, which will bring in employees and will bring in.
Are they having their own parking lot?
They're gonna put something in, I believe, for their employees, but I don't think they're utilizing it for anything else.
Right, so I believe that we touched on the questions that were posed during public comment. Now I guess it's time for council to have any further discussion that
I wonder, just for the benefit to help us understand and also for the public, if you could walk us through, like if this were approved tonight, can you tell us the timeline of what's going to happen and the flow of money as it goes out?
I can, and what I can't, Steve can. Typically, 30 days to ramp up for construction. Then the lot goes down.
Lot goes down, meaning it's closed.
Okay. Except for an area in front of the Kellys for their parking there. And then as the construction ramps up, typically you'll see probably, I think, about 10% a month in expenses coming into the borough.
Probably good.
Yeah, so if you have a $7 million project over a 10-month period, you'll expect to see $700,000. It's a 6-week turnaround, if I'm correct, on getting the money back from the grants. So you would typically see about 1.4 million on the street before you get your first 700,000 back. And then you'll utilize that over and over and over again through the project until you get to the point that you're actually expensing our own revenue.
So if you use the 1.3 million, that's going to be what's being used in place of what you suggested early on, or informed us, didn't suggest, but educated us about a bridge loan being needed in addition to the mortgage loan.
You have the cash on
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Go ahead.
So typically, I think we're looking at about 11 months for construction, and then hopefully having it reopened. It may take us a little bit longer for the Borough Hall to get moved over. We'll have some upfit work to be done in the Borough Hall, and then we'll get the Borough Hall open as quickly as we can.
So you're projecting that at the end of 11, say 12 months, a year, that you would be earning
we would be earning
revenue from parking.
So what we've looked at is that permit revenue will stay the same because you'll need a permit to park on Coast Street or Western Terrace. So that revenue stays the same. All it does is take the 20% of the people who are using the lot to pay for it, or 30%, I think about 30% that are actually using the kiosk, will then shift to the metered spaces or some of the lots on the opposite end of town, which are underutilized.
There are no metered spaces other than the 2-hour limit, is that correct?
The meter spaces are 2-hour limits.
Right.
But the other 2 parking lots, which
Kiosks.
have kiosks,
Right.
are not time metered. So we anticipate that utilizing the permit system, we will use the lot above the Borough Hall to hold about 7 permitted cars. We have, I believe, 6 spaces located in the police lot for permitted vehicles, and we will notify them of the vehicles that will be utilizing those, so they'll be assigned a spot in those locations. You'll have 2-hour parking in front of the police station that gets removed for permit parking as well. So there's plenty of parking available for this 1-year period of time.
It's ironic that you say that.
That might be in your way.
I know we're building
Just
for
want
the
to check
future,
this.
but we're paying in the brains. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure it's recorded.
Or as we go along.
I have some number things I'd like to go through. We've done well with numbers. Because they're numbers, I need to give you guys something to look at. So, and then see this out here. maybe grab some and pass them back, distribute them to the rear. I think there's probably enough to go around.
Do we have some for us?
Yeah.
Since it's about us at the moment.
I think
Yeah, yeah,
you already don't want it,
I think I got enough.
The real one, you gotta toss the results.
I've been trying to make that.
So we've been talking numbers in better detail than we've ever done before. Hopefully make some sense of it. So, let's see. There's been a premise from the beginning, as long as I've been around, that this project would be paid for by grant money and parking revenue. And I'm concerned, I'm trying to figure this out, I'm concerned that maybe we can't do that. So, what I gave you, this table, is titled How Much We Can Borrow. So, I say in the center boxes there, that's how much money you can borrow if you are paying back annually what's in the first column. So the first line is, if you have $50,000 to pay back, at 3% you can get a loan of about $750,000 and so forth. That makes sense? And Brian, I did this on a loan that is compounding its interest monthly, and for 20 years. And I did it as though you pay it annually. So, you said a bit ago, you had a figure of 4.5% interest rate, is that about where things are?
3.91 was the last quote I got.
3.91?
Which was
2.9?
3.91.
So essentially, the 4 column is the closest. Okay.
So that dropped from the 4.66
That's
that you
correct.
had.
That's correct. 3.91 was the last one.
And that's Fulton.
And our
Okay.
figures actually are interest being compounded monthly.
It wouldn't be compounded monthly, I'm not sure exactly how you, I mean, that's something you would see, I'm not sure how.
That's just common.
Yeah.
Loan.
It'd be a typical, just a typical, $2 million. The payment is $144,000 a year for $2 million, or for a.
Well, that's right where it sits.
Yeah.
So my figure for $2 million would be paying $150,000 a year.
Right.
So that we're talking about the same stuff.
Yeah.
So my concern is actually how much of the parking revenue that we have coming in. 240,000 is my working number. Right. Well, I use 240 just for reference, easy reference. How much of that is actually available to pay back the loan? And I find that we don't really have a good answer to the question of the expenses. Brian, you've given us, I find 2 references. I see one for basically 180,000. Those were from garages elsewhere.
Correct. Utilizing personnel to
Well,
collect
okay,
money
but
and.
you gave us that number of 180, more or less. And that would leave over $60,000 surplus to pay a loan. But you also gave us a figure where you had reworked things for Oxford so that the expenses come down to $70,000,
Correct.
leaving $170,000 from out of the 240 to repay the loan. I'm a little concerned. I think there's some items missing there. And
what items do you think are missing?
well, hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. I took a stab at trying to make an expense sheet. And I don't claim this is accurate or, the end of the question, but on the second page is the revenue. And Brian gave it to us, that's from permits, street meters, and kiosks, and the total is basically $240,000. So in my list of estimated expenses, I included the people that go around and...
We didn't include the revenue in there. There's no revenue for
Wait a minute.
tickets.
Wait. revenue I've got is 240,000.
Not
From
including
quarters.
tickets.
Right, because we don't
For
include
quarters.
tickets because you're not supposed to use them as a
Not including tickets.
Right, you're including the patrol line.
But you're including the
Right,
cost
'cause
for
the-
the meter patrol,
The
but not the
meter,
revenue.
right, what they're saying, Bob, is
No,
that,
I know what they're saying. I did not include the fines. Correct.
and that's what pays for the parking, the meter people.
Well, that's fine. I mean, in our parking fund, which we're gonna have, all of this stuff has to be, you know, revenue, expenses.
But you
We
can't,
collected $30,000 in parking tickets that we don't account for because it covers the cost of the attendance.
Monthly or
We
annual?
account for it in general fund, we don't account for it
Correct.
in any of the parts.
In any of the revenue
That you
numbers
made
that
that
come up
perfectly
with.
clear that we shouldn't have it in there.
Right.
And there, when we also discussed the
You
fact
can
that
say
we
your name a
put
lot
the expense in there.
go ahead, Bob.
You can respond.
Well, yeah.
All I said is this is my sort of working idea of how I was trying to figure things out. So I put the meter patrol costs. They are in fact, they're in fact in the police budget now, the meter.
Correct.
Okay. And I put some money in for daily janitorial, just empty the trash, little sweeping, litter, graffiti, whatever that is. I think, Brian, you've been telling us that would be borough employees that would do
It
that.
will be, but we do have 3 part-time employees, 3 hours a day, budgeted at $14,500 for the year,
Just for this.
for cleaning the borough, cleaning the garage.
Okay.
And that's
14.5.
employees?
We're gonna use our employees because we currently clean the lot.
Right.
So we're gonna use our employees until it becomes a point at which we can't. But we do have it included in the budget.
I'm just okay, so it's a category we have to take care of. I said 10,000, I don't know what your,
I have 14,450.
okay, more like 15,000. Okay. Then, contractual maintenance, let me come back to that one. Snow removal is just interesting. I never thought about it. But for I think, Steve, maybe you know, my understanding is if you have heavy snow, you want to get it off the garage because of the weight. You know, maybe it's not cars going up there, but you don't want the weight of the snow. But it's tricky to do. You got to get your bucket up there, and you have to put like a rubber thing on the bottom because you can't scrape the membrane on the surface. And then you have to have a chute on the side of the, you just dump it over into a dump truck? What do?
You stack it over in the corners.
But that doesn't take the weight off.
What do they do?
It's not
That doesn't take the weight off. It messes with the humidity.
It's just to make room for cars. All right.
We have the equipment to do that. We have a track those on.
Right. So presumably that's borough employees again. And I put in 5,000, but I don't know.
Which is
Just a guess.
similar to what I've utilized, because that's what we spend. We spent about 8,000 on doing the lot last year, but we had
Okay.
a couple of really bad snows.
Right, right. And then there's little items like fixing kiosks and meters and stuff. And I put something in for salaries, and this touches on what we talked about when we have a fund. So, you know, if you're allocating some of your salary to the parking, that goes in there. And I just thought maybe the police would be there some too, I don't know. Utilities, insurance, that matches kind of. Now, here's where it gets interesting to me, and I don't know what to do with this, because we've discussed this so much in here. But what I hear in here is not the same as what I hear people talking about when I go outside of Oxford. And, I mean, a bunch of us went to a seminar, I think it was November or December, the parking thing that the county put on. A bunch of us were there. And then I've talked to people who manage garages in a couple of places, York, Westchester, Aberdeen. But what I hear them say, there's 3 things that they point up. I mean, I'm trying to get a general picture from them. And they point up three things. One is, in this day and age, don't build a structure that you can't convert to a different use. We heard that over in that meeting. That's worrying around self-driving cars and so forth. The other is don't build capacity before the demand is there. And the third one is these membranes, and that's the taking care of your parking structure. Membranes, boy, it took me a long time to figure this out. But there are, basically the concrete is covered with multiple layers, but it's a urethane thing on top. And so what you're trying to do is prevent water from getting down to the concrete. Water and salts get in, penetrate the concrete, and start to rust the steel inside. You do not want that to happen, so that's why you coated the thing, and you have to maintain it. And what I hear from these other outside people is that you plan ahead, because at some point in time you have to replace that, and it's a major undertaking. I think it's, it's $1 million bill in that ballpark. So what I did, so that's where I put in membranes. That refers to accumulating money so that you will have it when you have to do that job. It may be years down the road. I said plus or minus 10, I don't know. And the other one is the contractual maintenance. Is this is a big structure. Power washing and doing minor repairs around there. These people have also mentioned that you budget for that, $20,000, $30,000. So that's where my numbers come from. So I don't see those. The thing is, kind of the bottom line here, for me, at least I need help here. If I go over here, and we're borrowing, and now it gets a little complicated, because if we're only borrowing 1.2, because we're using our 1.3, we've had the discussion about whose money that is, and the money should be, the 1.3 should be replaced. So in a sense, we're borrowing from ourselves. We should be planning to replace it, right? And
I don't know why you would replace money that's assigned to a specific reason, such as constructing a project. I don't know why you would replace that. That would come in.
Because it comes into the idea that it is ultimately taxpayer money, or it's borough money that could be used for any project.
You're using it as
Right around on any of these streets.
Yeah.
Well, as somebody said, we could be building playgrounds or sidewalks with that money. And the idea is that...
Can we just be clear that we really can't do sidewalks with that money?
Or curbs.
Well, no, because it's a homeowner's responsibility to do sidewalks, so
No,
we're
it
struggling
isn't.
with that
Not
100 times tonight. Let's not go down that road. Talk about lights or something.
He also said that over that 20-year period, this will generate $2.whatever million. That will be paying back.
That's without any increases in.
That's what I'm getting at.
That will go back into the general fund.
We're intending to repay back into the reimbursement.
You say each payment, or you're saying over 20 years, it's over $2 million, it will be coming back into the capital fund, or the general fund, wherever we want to put it.
Well, my concern then is, what's our grand total borrowing?
1.22 million.
2.22? Well, that's a bank loan.
1,223,000.
1.2 plus 1.3 of our own is about 2.5. Okay, so we're close. Getting close. At about 150,000 at 4%. Here's my problem. If I add mine up.
Could I ask that you share what you're discussing, because it might be relevant, that it would help us to understand? Or, so we'll just stop and listen to Bob? I'm
Sorry, we had a little
focusing
sidebar.
on everything.
You finish and then we'll talk, we'll
Okay.
share.
Well, My computation, and I said, I'm just trying to make up a working expenses list so I know how much money is left over. And I don't think we've really got a full picture of the expenses in this. When I add mine up, I don't have 150, I have 75. So I can only borrow 1 million, so I'm shy. Right? That's the place I want to leave it. As I see it, we don't have the revenue to pay for this strictly out of parking income.
Right, if we add back.
Add the
Add
45,000
the
back in.
45,000 back in.
You gotta add quite a bit back.
And that gets us at 122, so that's just the patrols.
Maybe Steve can start with it.
I guess we're assuming then that people are never going to learn to pay to us, and we are always going to have these bonds. Is that correct? Is that
Well,
the
no,
assumption?
we've seen those go down, and I would expect to see them continue as people get used to the system. And they fluctuate up and down.
But that is what we're using to cover the meter attendance.
Because it's been the same, not just in the parking lot. It's been the same all over the entire borough. Even when it was a quarter an hour, we were still issuing almost the same amount in fines. So that hasn't changed. That's been relatively stable.
And what is the number, 30-some thousand?
The parking tickets issued year to date is 2,287. Parking tickets revenue year to date is 29,535.
So you were saying 30-some as an annual?
Well, that's the year to date amount of what,
And you haven't got, and that was from July.
and that's from, right, from July.
August, yes, 5 months, yeah. And we're at 30,000. I projected 45,000.
45, so it's pretty much of a wash. With
It's a
the-
wash.
Right.
Which is now, I think,
Which we've been saying all along.
So you're not taking that from your current police report?
There's
Yes.
always a month
Yeah,
behind.
It's
so
always a month.
It's September's.
it's September,
so that's through August.
right, so it's through August.
No, this is September's report. So this is the numbers that I have through September.
So that includes revenue generated in September?
Or August.
I think it includes September, because that's
think
where
it-
we had the problem.
Am I wrong?
Her numbers were not matching the treasurer's report, and I brought that to the attention of Arlene this last 2 weeks ago, and they do match now, because they found the error. So I think when Lorraine is quoting her figures, she's right, it's through September's figures that she's
Well,
quoting.
that's September's report, which would only give you to the end of August. They couldn't give you
Well, this
September.
is October's
It's
report.
She
dated,
says it's September's report.
it's dated October 11th, and it says September
Then
2018
it's up to
police
Yeah,
report.
it's up through September. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's 9 months.
Then the figure would end up about $39,000, $40,000 for the year, if we kept the same reason.
Well, budget.
But our expenses are not anywhere near that high up to this point. Or
Meter
attendance.
How much are they?
Right now, I think we're at about $11,000 in expenses for parking meter attendance.
But the draft, as Bob's sheet correct, the draft budget is $45,000.
The budget is 45.
Yeah,
We
that's
have
your
not-
budget.
Revenue we're
we have
generating
not
this
spent-
year.
We have not
What
spent
we
that.
project what will be spent next year, we have to make more money.
They're gonna add way more parking places.
Well, and the more you increase the parking enforcement, the more people take it, right? So it just escalates.
And we are correct in saying that we have 7 years from the date the deed was signed that BB&T gave us the lot in order to dig a foundation and have a foundation for the garage. And that date was in 2016.
Started in 2016.
So we have 7 years from that date.
Brian, what
in
year,
order to-
what year did you come, 2016?
2016.
Because that agreement was made when Betsy
Prior,
was actually
prior
here.
to me being,
But earlier.
Early in
I think it was
2016.
just earlier.
Somebody
Yeah.
asked, we never asked me if anyone had approached BB&T at any point and asked them if we could renegotiate. I don't think we have.
No.
Actually, it was probably with National Debt first.
It was.
And then it got
Right, yeah.
transferred over to BB. We didn't actually negotiate with BB.
Okay, so we've never talked.
No, we originally negotiated with that.
It took a long time to get to that. You can imagine if we didn't do it.
How long did it take Betsy to buy that lot?
What's that?
How long was Betsy working on that lot?
20 years.
Oh, a long time.
Years. And to get meetings with the right people, and then right before you meet, somebody got transferred to a new job, and Stacy was, saw in the Verizon project.
Well, I think it's a hassle. I don't think that's a good reason to just not ask them. If we're using that as a reason why we want to support the project that they want to negotiate.
Keep in mind, we didn't have a lot either, so
It was about
that may be a condition of the renegotiation.
Could you eminent domain something like that?
What?
I mean, like if they wouldn't negotiate the lot, if we needed it for the public. No, but if it went back to them, I mean, would it be possible, because if we needed it for our public purpose?
Potentially.
Yeah.
How would you emanate domain a lot that you have possession of and you gave back?
No,
to somebody?
I meant if it went back because you weren't meeting the terms of the agreement.
Yeah, because the thing is, it's easy to say we need this lot as part of Sparkman, but we still don't have 8 million dollars with the garage on it. That's just like, I need this thing that I don't have.
where are we getting the 8 million?
I don't know.
Well, it's 7 million without anything that we don't know about. Yeah.
Can we take a vote on to see whether you guys can go ahead and vote for this thing? Can we vote, you guys vote? If everybody hasn't done their homework by now, mercy heavens. Can we vote?
The next thing that I was going to say was, I believe we've had a lot of discussion.
I have one word that I'm addressing. If in fact this motion carries tonight, those of us who are not going to run for re-election might want to reconsider that option and let the public decide that, because it might not be fair to dump the project on brand new people coming in.
Or some may think that other people can take a turn and a share at the table after, after many, many, many years of people sitting around the table together. So I don't think that that should be a reason to run or not to run.
I have one thing I'd like to say.
Nice and loud.
I have spent a lot of time trying to see what sides of this. I have talked to councilmen, I've tried to listen to people. I ask that before you vote, you really think about, because of your money, your ability to support yourself and your children that you are putting on the line, because not everybody has the same circumstances that people at the council, if you would still be so eager to spend this money. Because when we asked people who own businesses to back this, they did not choose, they did not want to, they laughed. So, I'm not asking anyone to respond to that, I'm just asking you to think about it, because I've thought about this a lot.
But they do back it, Amanda, just in the way that we back it with their taxes that they pay.
So you say.
I'm
And
just
the
saying,
permits that they pay.
if you feel like you spend your money on this, but think about that. Because I haven't heard a lot of people who are pro-garage really consider the other side since I came on council.
And I assume we're going to do a roll call.
You ready? Yep. All right, Mr. Hoover, let's have it.
Mr. Hershey,
Yes.
Mr. Ketchum,
No.
Mrs. Lombardi,
Yes.
Mr. Hurd,
Yes.
Oh, two.
Mr. Russell,
No.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Birdwell,
Nope.
vote passes 4-3.
We're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Outside.